Every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Whether it be true or not, I can say for one that I have no other so great as that of being truly esteemed of my fellow men by rendering myself worthy of their esteem. Spoken at New Salem, Illinois, over a century and a half ago, the words of Abraham Lincoln describe a group of today's men and women whose distinguished careers and lives have earned them the esteem of their state and nation, and the honor of being recognized as laureates of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois. Since 1965, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois has brought together business, labor, educational, cultural, and community leaders to recognize those who have brought honor to Illinois in the spirit of its most famous son.
The basic purpose of the Lincoln Academy is to award the Order of Lincoln, which is the state's highest award, to Illinoisans either by birth or residence who have brought great distinction to our state by their deeds. The main thing of what have they done with their successful careers that have brought credit to the state and have been, in their respective fields, something for humanity.
Appointed by the governor, the nonpartisan, not-for-profit academy is unique among the 50 states in its structure.
There are other states, of course, that honor their citizens, but it's not our type of ceremony. It's not based on a great Illinoisan like Abraham Lincoln, but it is a ceremony and a procedure to pick the laureates that is very thorough. And for those many reasons, we think we're quite different.
Honorees are inducted into the Lincoln Academy as laureates in a formal convocation ceremony where they're presented by the governor with the Order of Lincoln Medallion, the state's highest honor for individual achievement. Its colors of red, violet, and green symbolize the state bird, the cardinal, the state flower, the violet, and the leaves of the state tree, the oak. The Academy's activities also include recognition of outstanding senior students at each of Illinois' four-year colleges and universities, and the Hall of Fame of Historic Illinoisans, honoring those of achievement who lived prior to the founding of the Academy, including its namesake, Abraham Lincoln. This year's honorees come from diverse backgrounds, but each represents the leadership, courage, and compassion of Abraham Lincoln. A former White House press secretary who turned tragedy into triumph as an advocate for the disabled and gun reform laws. A healer and teacher whose research has improved the quality of life for thousands with digestive diseases. A corporate executive committed to sharing his talents far beyond the world of business. A journalist who pursues stories around the world to inform and delight his viewers. A university leader and presidential advisor who set new standards for quality in education at all levels.
The new laureates have been selected by the officers, regents, and general trustees of the Academy in a procedure that commenced early last year. They are to be honored by the state of Illinois and decorated with the Order of Lincoln by the governor, who also serves as president of the Academy. I ask that Gail S. Pyatt, secretary of the Academy, read the citation for laureate James S. Brady.
Born in Centralia, Illinois, James S. Brady was appointed assistant to the president and White House press secretary by President Ronald Reagan in 1981. Within a few short months, an assassin's attempt on the life of the president changed Mr. Brady's life, but he has battled back from his injuries to become one of the public's most effective lobbyists and advocates. Governor Edgar, I am honored to present James S. Brady as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy.
Your Excellency. Congratulations. Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much.
I'll hand this to you when you leave.
Thank you, sir.
Jim Brady's road to the White House began around his kitchen table, where he was brought up on a steady diet of politics.
My biggest role model was my mother. As you can see, I strayed into politics, and she was the first woman elected to the office of precinct committee man in the state of Illinois. Usually the precinct committee woman was appointed by the fellow who was elected precinct committee man. But not Mother. She ran on her own, mounted the campaign, and was elected. So she was not a committee woman, she was a precinct committee man.
Brady's own political career took off while he was still a student at the University of Illinois, as he joined the Washington staff of Senate Minority Leader Everett Dirksen of Illinois. The 1962 graduate also served as an honor intern in the Justice Department before returning to Illinois, where he quickly found his calling as a campaign manager and public relations expert. His time in Illinois included a stint as Director of Legislation and Public Affairs for the Illinois State Medical Society. His tenure in Washington began in earnest in 1973 as a communications consultant to the United States House of Representatives. Other assignments followed quickly as special assistant in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Management and Budget, and as a special assistant to the Secretary of Defense. In 1980, Brady joined Ronald Reagan's successful presidential campaign as Director of Public Affairs and Research. He was appointed assistant to the President and White House Press Secretary in January 1981.
The dream. Intelligent. And all these canards you heard that after lunch he'd go into the office next to the Oval Office and sleep. No. He was usually coming into my office to kick butt or something like that. Or going from floor to floor to make sure that everyone was doing something that was productive. I can remember the first thing that he told us when we came in, they got all the special assistants together. He said, the first one I see with their feet on the furniture is out of here. Because we had seen a prior administration, and a lot of the pictures were taken in the office, you know, head back, lean back in the chair with the feet up on the desk. He said, we don't own this place. We're merely stewards of this place. And people will judge our stewardship by how well we left the campsite when we leave it. And I heard that a lot in Boy Scouts, that we always tried to make the campsite look better when we left it than it was when we found it.
In the months following his appointment, Jim Brady had earned the respect of the tough White House press corps. They liked him for his candor, honesty, and sense of humor. His future was bright. But that future was changed forever on March 30th, 1981, when an assassin attempted to kill the president. Critically wounded by a bullet to the head, Brady was permanently disabled and endured an arduous regimen of physical therapy. But the bear never gave up.
Secretary to the President of the United States, Mr. Jim Brady.
And with that, Press Secretary Jim Brady, flashing the thumbs-up sign, returned briefly to the White House to formally open the newly remodeled press room.
How about the alternative? I wasn't ready for him to dig a hole and throw me in and then throw dirt on me. Was not ready for that. And I know that I'm not the one that says when I come and when I go. But I remember my neurosurgeon saying to my wife, Sarah, or as I call her, the raccoon, told the raccoon, says, your husband has a tremendous will to live. And he did. He said he's fighting all the way. And so I think if he was going to take me, that perhaps would have been the easiest time to do it. I would have offered, or was in a position to offer perhaps the least resistance. But evidently I had more resistance there than I thought I could gin up.
Brady says family, friends, and faith helped him make the long journey back.
I told my doctor, I says, I'm not as far back as I'm going to come. He said, oh, really? He said, how do you know what else you're going to do? And I said, watch this space. He said, do you really believe that? And I said, yes, I believe it, because if I didn't believe it, it wouldn't happen, would it? And he said, not a bit. I said, I believe it, and it's going to happen. And I have seen myself being able to do more things than you know, when it just kind of stopped there for a while. And all of a sudden I started doing new things. And there was a man up there that was saying, Brady, today you're going to be able to do this.
Brady applied that same willpower to the fight against handgun violence.
The wounds and the memory still hurt today. I've asked the politicians in Washington to keep handguns out of the wrong hands, but they've done nothing. There was one group that hoped that I'd just stay home and watch the Home Shopping Network, or, you know, go to our beach house and just stay there. But I said, no, not my work here is not finished.
Brady and his wife Sarah led a 7-year battle for gun control legislation, ending in passage of the Brady Bill, the law named in his honor, requiring a 5-day waiting period for the purchase of a handgun while a background check of the buyer is conducted. Today, Brady crisscrosses the country on behalf of Handgun Control Incorporated and is a powerful advocate for the disabled, as vice chairman of the National Head Injury Foundation and vice president of the National Organization on Disability.
Give people with disabilities a chance, and we'll show you what we can do.
We're not second-class citizens. We still have a lot to give as becoming a laureate. You'll find out what we can do. When I talk to prospective employers, I say, hire us. We'll surprise the hell out of you. I usually tell people that are in a chair walking with a cane 2 things. One, persevere, because it's always darkest before the dawn. And the second thing I tell people is to keep your sense of humor. Because if I can remember doing the things I was told to do, and, you know, would have a pratfall or something like that, if I got so stuffy and so wrapped up in, you know, what I was thinking about this, I would have never been able to do it. But, you know, every now and then I'd have a good laugh at myself. Just sit down and say, Brady, you messed that one up. Although my background involves writing speeches and spinning a good message, I must say the honor you have bestowed on me tonight nearly leaves me speechless. Note I said nearly. I think the thing that comes close to the way to feeling it tonight is when I got the call from the folks at the big house, I don't mean prison, asking me to become press secretary to President Ronald Reagan. This perhaps supersedes that. I'm so very pleased and proud to be able to share with all of you tonight a true highlight of Bear Brady's life. Thank you again for this wonderful recognition. It means a great deal to me to be among such distinguished company as the laureates of the Lincoln Academy. Thank you very much.
Born in Boston, Massachusetts, Dr. Joseph B. Kirzner's career over 6 decades has shaped the course of modern gastroenterology. As a researcher, teacher, administrator, author, fundraiser, and perhaps most importantly, as a role model for the compassionate clinician, he has been a major force, raising gastroenterology from the realm of speculation to that of objectivity and decision. On behalf of the thousands of men and women who have benefited by this man's steady devotion to his science and to his work, Governor Edgar, I am honored to present Dr. Joseph B. Kirzner as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy.
I'm from Boston originally, and was the oldest of 5, and there quite a lot of illness in the family. We had every infectious disease there was, and that coupled with accidents brought us in contact with hospitals and doctors really from an early age on. And it was most impressive to see these young physicians scurrying around in the hospital and doing their assignments and helping us out with these problems. So that really was I believe, the way I got interested.
Kersner's burning goal to become a physician transcended the grim realities of the Great Depression. He worked odd jobs to pay his way through medical school at Tufts University, where he graduated in 1933. He accepted an internship at a small Chicago hospital the following year and quickly found himself drawn to the world of academic medicine.
I was very idealistic, and I didn't think doctors should be talking about money all the time. And one day I was invited to come to the University of Chicago to what was called Grand Rounds. And this was a remarkably different world. Everyone here was full-time. Money was not a topic at all. The purpose here was to take good care of patients and also do research and develop new knowledge.
He was most impressed with Dr. Walter Palmer, who had established the first academic unit in gastroenterology at the University of Chicago in 1927.
Between the two of them subsequently, from 1935 onwards, they brought more critical analysis and scientific principles to bear on this field that until then was more just clinical observation and little scientific basis behind it. That is the field of gastroenterology. After Dr. Palmer stepped down, Dr. Kersner stepped into his shoe, so to speak, and he brought these same principles to bear, that is scientific rigor and academic values to this field. And so he can really be considered the father of, he and Dr. Palmer, the father of this field.
Gastroenterology was formally recognized as a specialty in 1940, and Dr. Kersner has been a major force in its evolution. A world-renowned authority on digestive diseases, particularly ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, he has written over 675 scientific papers for leading medical and research journals and authored 14 books on the subject, including texts for students, reference volumes for practicing physicians, and a popular guide for patients and their families. As a teacher, he's trained over 200 specialists in gastroenterology. This clinician, who has helped thousands of patients worldwide, believes it's not enough for doctors to be moved by suffering. There has to be more.
As wonderful as that is, you have to couple it with knowledge and with new information. And so the ultimate in the care of the patient is caring for the person, but also making the right diagnosis and applying the right treatment promptly. And I think that represents the ultimate in compassion. And I think this is a message that needs to be delivered time and again, especially today because of this tremendous technological explosion that has enveloped medicine and science.
Colleagues admire this balance of the centrality of patient care, teaching, research, and bringing the most modern science to help patients.
It's the very best in a scientific physician. One always thinks about how does one have both the wonderful principles of patient care and yet bring the rigor of scientific discipline to medicine. He melds the two of them almost uniquely. Many people are great at one or the other. He's great at both. That's a unique combination that I think has made him so very special. And Dr. Kersner is now in his middle 80s. He's still here every morning between 6:15 and 6:30, so if I come later than that, I feel a bit embarrassed. He still answers all his patients' questions at the bedside, answering family concerns, working many, many hours a day, writing beautiful papers and books. So it's daunting to know him because he is so very wonderful that one always has the view that one should strive to emulate him, and that's a huge challenge.
People in academia and people in major medical centers have a very special responsibility and that is that they should not be contained within themselves, but they should prepare the next generation and the next generation for further progress in the field. And so another driving motivation has been the teaching of students and residents and interns and fellows, graduate students. This is a remarkable period. I started in the 1930s when life was so primitive, and here now we can look at a single cell in all its dimensions, identify what enters the cell and what leaves the cell, what is on the surface of the cell, and particularly the remarkable molecules that are on the cell membrane. And I would venture that in the next 10 to 20 years there will be remarkable discoveries. One of the interesting thoughts that I have from time to time is how to explain the direction that I took. How did I happen to come to this small hospital on the south side of Chicago, so close to the University of Chicago? And what if I had gone to another part of Chicago that was not near the university? I think my whole life would have been obviously would have been entirely different. And sometimes I have the feeling that the Almighty does things in wondrous ways and directs you for some ultimate purpose that, and my wife and I have always had the idea anyway in medicine, we're never interested in money. We never had any, and it never really mattered that much to us. And we actually looked upon medicine as a ministry.
Medicine, I reassure you, is far more idealistic and far more resourceful today than when I began in the 1930s. And medicine continues to attract humanistically oriented young men and women for whom service to mankind and service to womankind is more important than personal material gain. For them and for me, medicine always will remain a profession, a calling, entailing a way of life dedicated to the service of others and a higher good. So members of the Academy, ladies and gentlemen, the great honor that you have bestowed upon me tonight is especially meaningful for the prestigious company in which you have placed me. Thank you very much.
A native of Independence, Kansas, William H. Curtis is a broadcast journalist who has earned the respect of viewers, educators, and other broadcasters with his critically acclaimed newscasts, documentaries, and series of investigative reports. Mr. Curtis is truly a most influential man in the most influential medium of our time. Governor Edgar, I present to you William Curtis as a laureate of the Academy of Illinois.
Sun and planets, not only to the Earth and Moon, but also to any two chunks of matter. All right, class, now we're getting to the most important part of our lesson on universal gravitation. What property of a body...
This is no way to teach physics.
This is the way to teach physics.
I enjoy the process of communication, and I describe it as a circle. That circle involves observing facts, events happening, recording that, directing a cameraman and a crew, recording it, then bringing it back and preparing it, writing, editing, producing into a piece, then performing to communicate the facts, and ultimately then the presentation of it. All those are little steps, each one of which I get enjoyment out of.
Television is a labor of love for Bill Curtis, a journalist whose remarkable career reflects the coming of age of the most influential medium in the American experience. Bill Curtis thrives on the process of bringing home the story to millions of viewers and the challenges of a career he entered quite by chance.
I had a formative experience when I was just graduated from law school and I was studying for the bar. And a friend of mine, I had worked my way through by working at the first television job I had. And a friend of mine asked me to fill in during vacation. And so I left my bar review class on campus of Washburn University School of Law in Topeka, Kansas, went out, and I was on the air when a tornado came through. And as it blasted through the town, I gave the alarm and reported then on it. And I think after 24 hours on the air, what I learned was that this business can carry a message of life or death. It can affect lives deeply. And for that reason, I've taken it very seriously.
The late 1960s found Bill Curtis at WBBM television in Chicago, where his award-winning coverage quickly earned him the reputation for going where the action is.
Once upon a time, an anchor person was literally anchored to a chair, and I think Bill Curtis broke the mold of what an anchor person is all about by getting out from the anchor chair and going not only around the city and the state, but also around the world, and was one of the premier broadcasters in the 70s and also 80s, that really he took the people to the story, and whether that story was downstate or again halfway across the world, Bill Curtis was there bringing a unique journalistic insight into the particular story and making the folks back home feel that their friend, their local reporter was on the scene and giving it to them straight.
Moved by the plight of children worldwide, Curtis has been honored by many groups and organizations, including UNICEF. Like most journalists, he hopes his next story is his favorite, but he's justifiably proud of the work done by his investigative focus unit for in-depth coverage of issues.
I went back in 1980 to Vietnam and discovered Amerasian children who were being cast out of society. Came back, told the story, and here is the beauty of journalists' job to communicate problems to intelligent people who can solve those problems. Congressmen saw it. They passed legislation which allowed these Amerasian children to come back over a number of other immigrants.
1982 saw Curtis in New York anchoring the CBS Morning News and producing a series of highly respected hour-long CBS reports. But he missed his ties to a local audience.
Good evening. I'm Bill Curtis. When you serve a local community, you see the people you're reporting about the next day. I mean, you're part of their lives, and there is a direct relationship. You're helping them understand what's going on in their lives, and there's a great satisfaction to that.
Returning to Chicago in 1985, Curtis realized his dream of expanding documentaries into new areas on public and cable television. His Peabody Award-winning New Explorers program on PBS led Newsweek to describe it as Nova with an adrenaline rush.
The philosophy is to follow a working scientist into the field. Second level is that it's a scientific education adventure. Third level, and more specifically, is that it's the scientific process at work. The scientist observes, he hypothesizes, and says, I'll bet it works this way. But in order to find out, I've got to go into the field and develop an experiment to gather data to prove it. And then we conclude. Now, fourth level, it's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a plot. It's an adventure. It's a story. And therein is my philosophy of teaching.
Curtis also produces 2 weekly series for cable television's Arts and Entertainment Network. The documentary-style investigative reports and American Justice give him the time to do a story justice.
It's writing a book or a magazine article compared with a newspaper article. It is just a better way to tell a story. And you get to cover everything, all those things you have to leave out of that 2-minute piece on local television news. And I just get a satisfaction. You can develop mood, emotion, make people feel what's going on, in addition to just adding information.
Bill Curtis, I think you'd probably have to describe as a member of the old school, in that he does walk that line. He is a balanced reporter. I've been watching and listening to Bill Curtis for over 25 years in Chicago, and I can't tell you whether he's a liberal or a conservative or a Republican or a Democrat. He gives it to you straight and lets the viewer decide on particular issues, and that's what a good television reporter should do. And unfortunately, there aren't too many around that do it that way anymore, but Bill Curtis is in, I think, a league of his own when he does it.
I'm a straight reporter. I've always thought of myself not as an anchor man or anything other than a guy who's going to tell it down the middle. I've shaped my whole life and my personality and image, I think, like that. Not an advocate. Somebody who tried very hard to accurately portray the facts. Somebody's got to do it, as my hero Walter Cronkite says, and it might as well be us.
We are not strangers to change in Illinois, but imagine an age when you will be able to turn on your television set and dial up any program you want to see that has appeared in the last week, any book from the Library of Congress, see any painting in the Louvre, doctors able to operate on a patient in another city. I often wonder if the pioneers who moved west across this rich farmland looking for a better life further to the west sensed the same thing, change. Change is coming, going where they'd never been, not knowing exactly how they would make it out there, but driven by a faith that the future was great. The same spirit beckons us in this day and age. As for me, not only do I thank you deeply tonight, all I want to do is be there to do a documentary on it. Thank you.
Robert H. Millott is currently chairman of the executive committee of the FMC Corporation, a 150 Fortune company. For more than 40 years, he has contributed to the growth, development, and success of this Chicago-based multinational enterprise. He is one of Illinois' preeminent business and civic leaders. Governor Edgar, I'm highly honored to present Robert H. Millott as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy.
I enjoy being outdoors. I enjoy nature. You'll notice that a lot of the pictures I've taken are in the Arctic, in the Antarctic. I donated a polar bear to Bowdoin College because the polar bear is their mascot, and they saw some of my polar bears and they liked them. So I donated one of those to them.
The pictures lining Robert Millott's office tell of a lifetime of journeys that have literally taken him to the very ends of the earth. Their content and quality speak to the character of a man whose innate curiosity about the world and quest for excellence led him to become the CEO of a world-class company and a respected participant in the issues of his day. A familiar and influential voice at business roundtables and academic think tanks, Millott is equally adept in the political arena and international affairs, allowing him to bring a unique worldview to the many public and private institutions he serves in an active retirement.
Well, he's sort of a Renaissance guy. I mean, he's got sweeping interests in international affairs, quite apart from the business of FMC. He's got interests in history. He's on the board of the Smithsonian. He's been an inveterate traveler and explorer, North Pole, South Pole. He's been everywhere. And I think that's important because somebody who captains a company as large as FMC, with all of its diversity in product, its diversity in employees, its diversity in places of manufacture, has got to have an understanding of the world and of people beyond the narrow focus of what machine makes what product. And he certainly has that.
Born in Boston in 1926, Malott credits spending his high school and early college years in Kansas with giving him a sense of perspective and an appreciation for the broad range of values.
Not that I would ever trade my graduate education and my exposure to the East very shortly after I got through college, but I wouldn't trade the fact that I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and it seemed to me to it's given me sort of a sense of balance, and that in combination with the sophistication of an Eastern education, which I also was lucky enough to have, I think I became a person that I would consider fairly well-rounded.
The Harvard MBA joined FMC Corporation in 1952, where he quickly distinguished himself in management positions in the company's chemical and machinery divisions as a decisive and innovative administrator. Those qualities resulted in his election as president and chief executive officer of FMC in 1972 and chairman of the board 1 year later. His first decision as CEO was characteristically bold, relocating FMC's corporate offices from San Jose to Chicago, where he strongly encouraged his executives to participate in community, educational, cultural, and political affairs, to be complete people.
It seems to me that the difference between those who succeed and those who don't are those that have an ongoing curiosity, who continue to learn, who continue to reach out for things that are not directly associated with their businesses, but all of which have peripheral value to them as businessmen.
Malott's natural interest in politics and public policy organizations clearly had an impact in his success and that of FMC at home and abroad.
Business leadership today has to become involved in the external world, whether it be contributing to eleemosynary institutions that need business thinking, or whether it means becoming involved in politics. I think if businessmen do not become involved in politics, they deserve what they get. And that means understanding issues. It doesn't necessarily mean running for office, but it does mean understanding issues. It means knowing the candidates, knowing who you're voting for, the positions that they're going to take.
Bob has always been a guy who not only took a very strong stand about issues that affected the Illinois business climate, but about issues that affected the national business climate as well. For years, he was a very lonely voice in the fight for reform of product liability legislation in Congress. I can remember going there with him 10 years ago, and nobody gave him a chance. Today, it's passed the House and Senate. He's always taken a very large presence on Wall Street on behalf of his company and in international affairs, because FMC manufactures all over the world, and it's in so many different businesses, from defense to gold mines to herbicides and insecticides and everything in between. He's had to be a world player in the business community from Chicago, and there are few CEOs that I've met in my 20 years who've played all those roles so successfully.
As American businessmen, we have to learn how to adapt to the cultures in the countries where we have to operate. And I think too many Americans historically, maybe some even today, think that we are so advanced in terms of our modus operandi and our culture that we will benefit the rest of the world by bringing all these assets to them. And those who understand that that's not the case are going to be the ones that succeed.
Malott may have a bit more time to devote to travel, photography, and art collecting these days, but he continues to practice his philosophy that business has an obligation to serve the outside world. Beyond a busy schedule at FMC and the boards of directors of the Amoco and United Technologies Corporations, he devotes considerable time to a diverse group of institutions and organizations, including the American Enterprise Institute, the Hoover Institution, the Lyric Opera of Chicago, the University of Chicago Board of Trustees, the Advisory Council of the Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University, the National Parks Foundation, the Public Broadcasting Service, and the National Council of the National Museum of Natural History of the Smithsonian Institution, where as chairman he brought public participation to the museum's policymaking for the first time.
This is one of the great natural history museums in the world, and the asset value of a museum of that stature seemed to me to justify some support and some attention, and I felt that a board of outsiders consisting of both scientists and businessmen should be able to make a major contribution to how the museum was run.
Malott encourages others to offer their time and expertise to support the institutions they value, believing the pressures they face have never been greater, and each will need leaders in the mold of Abraham Lincoln, leaders who possess the dual qualities of pragmatic realism and entrepreneurial commitment to change.
My own opinion as to the type of leadership required in the environment of the future is probably best reflected in a quote from George Bernard Shaw, who once said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world around him. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. All progress depends on the unreasonable man." In almost every institution today, policies have become knotted in bureaucracy, political correctness, inefficiency, and self-contradiction. Maybe the time has come for us to demand that our leaders adopt the courage and boldness of Shaw's unreasonable man and cloak themselves in the mantle of the man after whom the Lincoln Academy is named. I am honored to be part of an organization dedicated to keeping his legacy alive. Thank you.
Born in New York City, a product of the Bronx, Arnold R. Weber served as the 14th president of Northwestern University. For a decade ending with his retirement last year, Dr. Weber presided over a period of growth at Northwestern that left it poised to meet the challenges of the next century. Governor Edgar, I'm honored to present Dr. Arnold R. Weber as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy.
When I came to Northwestern, it was and still is a fine institution, and it's very peculiar. I've been at 4 institutions. Most universities say they're better than they are, and Northwestern was somewhat anomalous because I thought it was better than it gave itself credit for. So one of my tasks was to, in a sense, persuade the faculty and the students that this was the highest quality institution, and in so doing ratchet up their aspirations and expectations for themselves.
Arnold Weber's faith in Northwestern University was well founded in 1985, and so was the confidence trustees placed in Weber when they named him president of the institution. At a time when higher education nationwide was being asked to do more with less, Weber's discipline for balanced budgets transformed deficits into surpluses, making it possible to improve faculty salaries, make capital improvements, and develop significant new academic programs without large tuition increases. An excellent fundraiser, Northwestern's endowment almost tripled, with gifts approaching $100 million. Sponsored research grants more than tripled during his tenure, and today, record numbers of students are applying to Northwestern's undergraduate, graduate, and professional programs.
Well, there's various measures, faculty salaries being but one, quality of students measured by grades and class standing being another, the number of students who want to come here, the number of applicants for admission went up dramatically, which are some measures of the quality of the place. He also built a financial foundation from which someone else could then take over without the problem of deferred maintenance or deficits. So he left it in very good shape.
Trained as an economist at the University of Illinois and MIT, Weber brought a wealth of academic and governmental administrative experience to Northwestern. A former president of the University of Colorado, Weber served in the Nixon administration as executive director of the Cost of Living Council, associate director of the Office of Management and Budget, and assistant secretary of manpower in the U.S. Department of Labor. Weber served alongside his former professor George Shultz, himself another labor market economist, who was to become Secretary of State in the Bush administration.
Both of us were what's known in the trade as labor economists, and at that time there was a heavy interest in wages, collective bargaining, and unions. So it was easy to begin with the conclusions and march inexorably through the facts to arrive at the place from whence you'd started. Most issues in labor relations are contentious, and the basic rule was always get both sides. And I think that served me in pretty good stead in the other things that I did in my life, being in government, and particularly the 15 years as a university president, where people are always approaching you with a mixture of zeal and righteousness that wasn't always justified by the facts.
Weber believes university presidents should follow their own internal compass on tough issues, and like many university leaders of the period, Weber found financial pressures exacerbated the normal challenges of running a large and diverse institution.
A lot of that changed in the 80s when most institutions saw the end of what I call the great bull market in higher education, in which you'd seen hordes of young people come to the university, very generous support from alumni, state legislators, the federal government, the capacity to pass on outsized tuition increases, and all of that changed. We now had to behave and perform in an environment of, one, austerity, and two, where the public expectations were far more demanding to us. There was another contributing factor, and that was the rising cost of producing our goods, that is, education and the discovery of new knowledge. It induced a dramatic change in the culture, put pressure on administrators up and down the line as different faculty groups understandably vied to protect their position or claim limited resources.
Weber saw the decline in resources as a challenge to sharpen the university's focus, but not at the expense of students and their parents.
So we set as a clear management goal to moderate our tuition increases. And when I came here, I don't mean to sound immodest, if you looked at the 25 major private institutions in the country, we had the 8th highest tuition. This is the Harvard, Yale, Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago. And when I stepped down as president, we had the 24th highest.
It somewhat defies the law of gravity in the sense that he did it without raising tuition disproportionately. In fact, the rate of tuition was remarkably low compared to every other comparable school. He didn't do it by keeping faculty salaries down. In fact, he increased them relative to other schools. He didn't do it with deferred maintenance because he did more for the roofs and downspouts than anybody else. So you ask him, how could he have accomplished this with all that? And the answer was attention to detail. He had budgets. They were tough budgets, and it was treason for a dean to depart from them. And keeping at it year after year, it worked.
And I think all of us are committed to re-emphasizing undergraduate education, trying to get tuition under control, getting a better balance between teaching and research, and understanding that at the end, our strength is the confidence and support of the public at large, beginning with our alumni and going to the people of the state and the country. And that's often painful, but some pain might be necessary.
Since becoming chancellor in early 1995, Weber remains a familiar figure on the Northwestern University campus, but he's also putting his administrative expertise to work in other areas. Among the many boards and organizations he serves, Weber chairs the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club of Chicago, where he's presently engaged in trying to find remedies for the Chicago public school system. It's a natural choice for a person who's always been appreciative of the benefits of a good education.
I grew up in New York City in a working class family. Nobody had ever gone beyond the 8th grade. And through an improbable set of circumstances, I ended up at the University of Illinois. I remember that first year I paid the terrible sum of $80 in tuition, which took care of the tuition, and I had an opportunity to work at that time. And in a very profound sense, it changed my life.
Beyond this great honor, this event gives me the opportunity to thank the state for what it's permitted me to be and become. And I'm confident that with Illinois' continued commitment to this tradition, similar stories will be repeated 1,000-fold in the future. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor, Jim Edgar.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here in Southern Illinois as this organization, unique among the 50 states, meets once again to honor the sons and daughters of Illinois in the name of Illinois' favorite son. Abraham Lincoln once said that every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Some may aspire to great wealth. Others work to rise to positions of great power and influence. Others merely strive to make a difference in the lives of their fellow citizens. But Lincoln told his Sangamon County neighbors that he had no greater ambition than making himself worthy of their esteem. The individuals we honor tonight have distinguished themselves in their careers and in their lives. Lincoln talked of the towering genius, the man who confronts conventional wisdom, the man who disdains the beaten path in finding new challenges and solutions for them. These individuals of this great state are truly the towering genius of Illinois. Their accomplishments are both legion and legendary. They have made Illinois a better state for all of us to call home because of their work, their contributions, their dedication, and their ambition. We are a society founded on the fundamental right of giving everyone an equal chance. As Lincoln said, we expect the weak to grow stronger, the ignorant wiser, and all of society better and happier together. That is the spirit of Illinois. That is our heritage, the gift and the obligation we inherited from our ancestors who built this state into a land of opportunity for all. That is why we are proud to be Illinoisans. That is why I am proud of this great state. In the eyes of our neighbors, we have proved ourselves worthy of their esteem. Thank you.